Yeah, who I fear.
That's some real
and I want,
insecurities about it.
and they would try to get the women to fear them too, even though there was very little evidence at the time, of course, because it was a system of enslavement, very little evidence that any enslaved person was going to actually take the risk of sexual union of any kind, whether forcible or romantic, with a white woman, because they would have known the cost. But they tried to create that fear. The white elite planter tried to convince his wife and his daughters that we're going to protect you from that big dangerous man, which is an interesting way to maintain control over him in a racist way, and to maintain control over those women in a patriarchal and sexist and misogynist way. So it was a way for not only white folks to maintain power, but white men in particular, by saying, if you have a sexual relationship with this man and have a child, that child will be enslaved. And so therefore, that's another reason you wouldn't want to do that, because you won't even, your child won't even really be yours. Your child will be property now. And so sexism and racism worked hand in glove. You know, it was sort of interesting in an ironic way. These white men would put white women on a pedestal of womanhood and beauty, but it was really just as a way to control them. It wasn't as a way to liberate them. It wasn't as a way to allow them to have control over their own destiny. It was a way to put them up there and say, don't worry, we'll protect you. From who? From them, even though they probably needed quite a bit more protection from their husbands, you know.
How has your family dealt with, and with the family I'm talking about, I'm talking with, you know, your mom and your daddy, your aunts, your uncles.
Right.
You're from the South. What's been the reaction, you know, and how have you handled the reaction?
Well, I'm very fortunate, and it's probably very uncommon. You know, I'm who I am today because of my family. My mom is heavily implicated in who I've become, as is my dad. So in a way, I didn't have to sort of convince my folks. I didn't really have to do the thing that I think a lot of white folks do when they go this route, which is you might lose family, you might lose friends.
Sure.
I was very fortunate. I had a circle of support that actually helped create the person I am today. But having said that, you know, I still have to deal with parents who are very worried of issues of safety. There are, you know, great aunts and cousins who don't quite get it, but they respect it. And so I've been very, very lucky to have that, and to have a small circle of friends that I'm able to surround myself with who are supportive and who keep me, you know, going and really give me the incentive to keep doing it.
What was your inspiration? How did you, what started you down this path?
Well, my mom, when I was little, I grew up in Nashville. And,
you know, I asked that question,
yeah.
and we'll add this to it.
Yeah.
You're not an ordinary white guy.
No, I think that's true, and in many ways it's because I didn't have an ordinary white background. I mean, I grew up in Nashville, and my first educational experience, preschool, was at a historically black college. I went to Tennessee State for preschool. So all of my early childhood peers in the educational setting at TSU, with the exception of maybe 2 other kids, were all black. And the women that ran the program were mostly African-American women. So what this meant was, you know, by the time I got into 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, the people I identified with were black kids, because that was who I hung out with. That's who I played ball with. That's who I, you know, sat in the cafeteria with. So when I saw those black children, some of whom I had known since Tennessee State preschool, but others of whom I just identified with because they looked like the kids at TSU, when we would be in school and the black kids would get treated different, and they would be put over on one side of the room given remedial level materials, and then the white kids were all getting the advanced level. All I knew was, why am I away from my friends? Why are they over there and I'm over here? I didn't have a word for that because I was only 5 or 6, but I knew something was happening. Or if we were both acting up, acting fools, breaking the rules, and they were getting sent to the office and I wasn't, and I'm wondering, like, why is that happening, right? So I think my mom, by giving me this opportunity to be socialized in a non-dominant environment, did a huge favor for me, because 25 years later, when I was a community organizer in public housing, and I've got black women who are the leaders in those communities in public housing in New Orleans telling me about their life,